Hi, I'm Congresswoman Terry Sewell of Alabama's 7th Congressional District, and I'd like to welcome you to our 2023 Virtual Grants Workshop for Railroad Funding and Safety. Each year, I host a series of grants workshops to ensure that local officials know how to access the funding available to make our communities safer, stronger, and more prosperous. Today, I'm excited to be hosting our first ever grants workshop for railroad funding and safety. For years, block train crossings have plagued communities across the nation, and especially in Alabama's 7th Congressional District. These blockages make it more difficult for our residents to get to work, to get to school, to get to the doctor. They also pose major public safety risks, blocking first responders from addressing emergencies and life threatening situations. It's simply unacceptable, and railroad companies must be held accountable when these blockages occur. Last year, I welcomed the Federal Railroad Administrator, Mr. Bose, to Alabama so that he could see the impact of these blockages firsthand. In light of additional blockages and the recent train derailment and fire, I sent a letter to Administrator Bose requesting additional action. I've been working closely alongside our federal, state, and local partners, as well as our railroad companies, to develop a long term plan that will help reduce the impact of these blockages. I also helped secure key provisions in President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill to address blocked train crossings. Fortunately, we know that federal and state funding is available to help mitigate train issues in our community. It is my hope that today's workshop will better position our cities and counties to compete for this funding. Joining me today are three guests from the Alabama Department of Transportation and the Federal Railroad Administration. My guests will present information on resources, funding, and safety measures currently available to us. If you have any questions for our guests, please leave a comment below and our staff will follow up with you. My first guest is Ms. Oretta Barrett, Rail Programs Administrator for the Alabama Department of Transportation. Ms. Barrett, thank you for being here, and take it away.
Thank you, Congressman Sewell, for the opportunity to present some information regarding the Alabama Department of Transportation's Rail Safety Program. To begin with, the history of the program started from the Surface Transportation Assistance Act in 1987, which established the Section 130 of Title 23 of the United States Code, and that's primarily where we get our regulations and funding source from. The responsibilities that we have within the ALDOT program is to prioritize crossing locations, plan and develop projects, and administer the state's allotment of federal funds, as well as maintain our crossing inventory. Some of our primary goals that we have within the rail program is certainly to reduce fatalities and incidents at grade crossings, as well as use innovative and low-cost engineering improvements, increase the involvement of local agencies and stakeholders, as well as increase consolidation and crossing eliminations where we can achieve them. The Alabama Department of Transportation has a number of programs that we follow to ensure that we are structuring our programs accordingly. And there are some opportunities for local municipalities and railroads to be included in those plans. One plan that we have is our state rail plan. Our state rail plan covers the magnitude of rail operations within the state, any economic growth, any economic impacts, environmental impacts related to the rail program. We encourage railroads, local municipalities, any type of rail-related project or initiative for them to provide the information to our department so that it can be included within that program. That program opens up doors for now and in the near future. It's a 5-year plan that we do that where those municipalities and railroads can apply for certain types of grants that are offered federally. It lets the federal government know that they've discussed this with the state. The state is on board with their proposed or prospective projects or projects that they actually have a plan of action for. Being included in the state rail plan is one of the best ways to ensure that your project can ultimately receive funds in the future. We redo our state rail plan on a 5-year schedule as best we can. We are currently in the process of updating our state rail plan now. We anticipate releasing the updated state rail plan, which will be the 2023 state rail plan, in the fall of 2023. We currently have a consulting contract team working on that plan. So any information that any municipality, entity, railroad, or even community for that matter has related to rail and their projects or incentives, please by all means provide that information to us. Even after the fact, if that information becomes available after the state rail plan has been released, there will be opportunity to do an addendum to the state rail plan to have that information included. We prefer not to do an addendum, but if it is needed, our department can process that. There are some procedures that we will have to follow, but just provide us whatever that information is, and we will do our best to include that. Another plan that we have is our state action plan. Now, our state action plan ties directly to our Section 130 rail safety plan, our rail safety program. Within the state action plan, it details the information of what the state is doing to actively move forward with improving crossing safety within the state. Within that program, we take those initiatives and ideas and incorporate it into our Section 130 rail safety, whether it be through our priority ranking list project option or through our hazard elimination project option. And I will go into more detail in both of those options. But either way, our state action plan and state rail plan are the best ways to ensure that we are moving forward with improving safety and transportation through rail within the state. ALDOT actually receives roughly about $5 million annually for the administration of our Section 130 program. We have at least 3 years of obligation to execute and use those funds. The way that we administer the state's program, we have 2 different types of opportunity to program projects within the program. One way we program the projects is through our priority ranking list. That is our traditional method of programming crossing locations for crossing improvement. Our priority ranking list is data-driven. It consists of composite risk analysis, which we utilize 4 different formulas that are both reactive and predictive formulas. And it ranks all crossings within the state. The amount of funds that we have, we only are able to program so many crossings per year for funding. That funding for the Section 130 priority ranking list is 100% funded, so there is no local match requirement for that. It's just a matter of when that location comes up on our priority ranking list, we're able to program it. Our other method of programming projects is through our hazard elimination application. We release the call for applications once a year. Both programs are done annually. Actually, the next call for applications should be this coming week, where we release the applications for local municipalities, our ALDOT region and district offices, railroads, and other stakeholders who are responsible for roadway projects. They can apply to the application and submit their locations that they feel is of a greater need within their local areas or communities. We will review those locations and we will program them for funding. This program is parallel to our priority ranking list. Now, the stipulation with the hazard elimination application is it does require a funding share. This is the best way that we can stretch the federal dollars that we have, is by requiring a funding share, since it is not a part of our traditional method of programming projects. The applications give us a way to structure and program and prioritize locations for improvements. There are a number of eligibility requirements for both. I'll give you a couple examples. So we only program public grade crossings or public bridge locations or crossings to eliminate to do a grade separation or bridge project. Crossings that are functionally obsolete, which is now covered under the 2021 infrastructure bill. Pedestrian crossings, we do cover preliminary engineering and construction costs. We also do incentive payments for crossing closures to local municipalities. Some examples that are ineligible for crossing improvements through the program: new grade crossings or railway or highway improvements, automated enforcement, quiet zones, right-of-way acquisitions, utility relocations, utility relocation or adjustments, crossing surface repairs due to maintenance. So that is one of the number one requests that we get is for crossing surface repairs. Crossing surface repairs due to either railroad maintenance or highway maintenance is not an eligible item within our ALDOT program. We put the onus and responsibility back on the railroad or either the road authority to ensure that they are maintaining adequate crossing surface for motorists or pedestrians to cross. We do have various different projects that we've done within the Section 130 program, whether it be if there's a community being built that impacts crossing locations. We defer most of those to the local county commission or city to ensure that that development incorporates safety improvements for their development. But at times there are some locations that is difficult to determine if the added ADT or traffic for that particular crossing is associated with that particular location. That's when we go out and do the diagnostic reviews to determine which is best for that particular crossing location. Diagnostic reviews are very important for our program. That's how we determine what actually is needed. During the diagnostic review, it will be personnel from our rail safety office, our region office, city, county officials, local emergency service, any person who has responsibility, including the railroad, of improvements at that particular crossing location. They are at that diagnostic view, the decision makers. And we take all things in consideration, whether it be increased ADT, increased rail traffic, increased changes within a community, if a crossing is no longer being used. There are a number of things that we consider for crossing safety improvements. So we encourage, whether it be our ALDOT region folks or the locals, to, when that call for application goes out, by all means, make a submittal. You won't know if that crossing is eligible or is going to be included within the program unless you make an application. It is very vital that we utilize the funds that we have, although the $5 million don't go that far, because at times, depending on the improvements, it can range anywhere from $350,000 to upwards of $1 million for a single location to be improved. So it just depends on the nature of the improvements, of what that cost is. And we depend on the railroads to provide us that cost estimate. Some railroads are more expensive than others based off the labor, their direct cost and additives. Some, like our short lines, because they have their own workforce, it's at times a little less expensive to program locations there. But regardless of whom the responsible railroad is, we do our best to program any safety improvements that are needed, that are warranted for any particular location, the best we can within the regulations and funds that we have available. And if the crossing doesn't make the list, let's say 2023, reapply again for 2024 and keep reapplying until we are able to get to that particular location for improvements. If there are any questions that anybody has about the program or any discussions or just inquiries, please by all means contact our office. You can reach us in our public email box at al.rail@dot.state.al.us. Again, that's al.rail@dot.state.al.us. Thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to any safety improvements that we can program within the state. Thank you.
Ms. Barrett, thank you for that very informative presentation. As a reminder, if you have questions for our guests, please leave a comment below and our staff will follow up with you. Next, we will hear from Mr. Ryan Arbuckle and Ms. Jenny Zinn, two transportation industry analysts at the Federal Railroad Administration. Ryan and Jenny, thank you for being here, and take it away.
Thank you, Congresswoman. My name is Ryan Arbuckle, and I'm joined today with my colleague, Jenny Zhang, and we're both from the Federal Railroad Administration. And today we'd like to kind of provide some information on some of the discretionary grant opportunities that can help communities and localities, cities and towns to fund some efforts around eliminating blocked crossings in and around your community. So today, we have a quick overview of just kind of where we are with our discretionary grant programs, and then highlighting a few of the key programs that will provide funding, and then also kind of talk through some best practices that we've noticed over the last couple of years for applicants, as well as provide some additional resources that applicants can use to find more funding throughout the department. So with that, let's jump on into it. So these first two slides are just kind of to set the framework of where we are with all of our discretionary grant programs for the calendar year 2023 and into 2024. So the top row is our selection, or our notice of funding opportunity announcements. So these are the projected months in which we will announce the fiscal years that are indicated for the respective programs. So for example, as we see coming up in September and October, for FY23, we are projecting to announce our FY23 railroad crossing elimination notice of funding opportunity for that program. The bottom row shows the selections. So after our notice of funding opportunities have been closed and our evaluations are completed, we have our selections that we make. And our first one coming up right around the corner is for the FY22 railroad crossing elimination program, which we're going to talk a little bit about today as well. This slide and the next slide that you'll see here are available on the FRA website, and are really there to provide a transparent look as to what's forthcoming in our discretionary grant program, so that applicants can plan accordingly and know ahead of time both when the announcements are going to be made as well as when the selections are going to be announced. Keep in mind that these dates may change slightly depending on the amount of applications we get under some of these programs may delay the selections a little bit. Next slide. So after selection, this is just before we kind of get into some of the programs, it's just important to kind of talk about what happens after you get selected. So if you come in for one of our discretionary grant programs and you're selected under that program, there's a little bit more work that needs to be done prior to that funds being completed and the project being closed out. So here we have just a little bit of a roadmap of, after selection, we have a stage that's called pre-obligation, and that's where we're kind of refining the scope, schedule, and budget, identifying the performance measures, outlining the terms and conditions, and working through any of the environmental requirements. Once that's completed, it takes about 6 to 15 months, depending upon the project and the sponsors, the applicants' progress to date throughout that process. Once we complete that, we get into the post-obligation, which is where you're kind of doing your project. You're making the improvements. You're building that grade separation. You're installing that rail or whatever the project is that you've outlined within your application and were selected for. This is kind of depending upon the project, can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And then after that, the project's completed, we kind of have a little bit of a closeout period. So we like to make sure that it's very transparent and very applicants are aware of the process from notice to closeout. And this is one of those important aspects that sometimes is overlooked. Next. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, and Jenny's going to walk us through the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. Jenny?
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, so I want to talk a little bit briefly about just an overview of the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program in general. The purpose of this program is to fund highway rail or pathway rail grade crossing improvement projects that focus on improving the safety and mobility of people and goods. So we actually had a notice of funding opportunity for 2022, fiscal year 2022, published in July of last year. There was $573 million available. The application period closed in October, and we are actually working on getting out a selection announcement for those funds, hopefully in the spring or summer of this year. For any applicants who were not selected, we offer debriefings upon request to kind of give some idea of what you could potentially improve for next time as well. For the fiscal year 2023, we will also have $573 million available. That notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO, is anticipated in the fall or third quarter of this year. Okay, now just a little overview of how the funds that we plan to give out break down. There are certain set-asides that we'd like you to be aware of. For instance, not less than 3% of the total funding, so that's about $18 million, is actually designated for some planning projects. And of those funds, 25% of them, or $4.5 million, is reserved for planning projects in rural areas or tribal lands. Additionally, there is at least $1.5 million available for grade crossing safety information and educational programs. So those sort of applications are encouraged in that sort of set-aside bucket as well. And overall, we have a 20% of the total funds reserved for projects located in rural areas or on tribal lands. And a portion of that, 5% of that, is reserved for counties with 20 or fewer residents per square mile. So we're really trying to hit a lot of different buckets and set-asides with some of this money. Grant conditions to keep in mind. We are not awarding grants smaller than $1 million unless it is a planning project, and no more than 20% of the total funds in any fiscal year is allowed for projects in a single state. Okay. So just to get a little more technical for what this program really means, I just want to define grade separation or closure as an underpass or overpass to eliminate level crossings between the rail and highway users at an existing highway rail or pathway rail grade crossing. And we also are looking at sort of closing of highway rail grade crossings to vehicular or pedestrian traffic. So improvement projects, though, really relate to a wider kind of array of projects that include installation, repair, or improvement of crossings, grade separations, signals, gates, bells, warning devices, and related technologies all apply. Highway traffic signalization, lighting, crossing approach signage, and other improvements, such as medians or other barriers, also count. And pathway improvements like bollards, railroad crossing panels and surfaces, and other safety engineering improvements or highway rail programs that reduce risk are also what we consider improvement projects eligible under this program. In terms of applicants, this program is really geared towards public entities, so states and U.S. territories, political subdivisions of a state, federally recognized Indian tribes, units of local government, groups of local governments, public port authorities, metropolitan planning organizations, or some sort of group of the above are all eligible applicants. Now, in terms of projects that are eligible, as I mentioned before, the grade separation or closures that we talked about, track relocations, improvement or installation of protective devices, signals, signs that are related to sort of improve the safety at a separation or relocation project. Other means to improve the safety and mobility of people and goods at highway rail grade crossings. Groups of related projects that are described above that would collectively improve mobility of people and goods. as well as planning, environmental review, and design of an eligible project type. So there's kind of a wide array of projects that would be considered eligible. In terms of evaluation, what we're looking for from your applications are kind of two buckets of qualities, let's say. So one is technical merit. We want to look for a really good statement of work and application materials that you're submitting, how ready the project is and complete for in terms of the prerequisites to get going. How has the applicant performed in the past with such grants or other projects? Technical capacity, financial contributions. Do you have private sector involvement? These are all things we're keeping in mind, as well as personnel and consistency with your planning documents. In terms of project benefits, we're looking for how will this improve safety at those grade crossings? How will this improve the mobility of people and goods? And how will your project reduce emissions, protect the environment, or provide other community benefits? And potentially also improve emergency access to emergency services, or access to community and economic benefits. And we're also interested in seeing how contracting incentives maybe employ local labor to the extent permissible under federal law. Okay, so once we get, let's say we have your application, we're also looking at a few other selection criteria that fulfill our departmental goals. So these goals, of course, first and foremost for this program is safety. So we'd like to see safety justifications for your project. And we have a lot of different data and sources available to help you kind of look for that data to support your project. We're also interested in how your project potentially furthers equitable economic strength, equity and barriers to opportunity, climate change, sustainability, and helps transform some of our transportation infrastructure. Our program preference overall in terms of types of project really is we want to encourage grade separation projects, grade crossing closures, potentially through track relocation, and any sort of corridor-wide grade crossing improvements that can be made as well. Just 3 quick points to mention about how this project is, how this program is different from some of our other FRA programs. So one is we do not require benefit cost analysis for this program. We do want to see some sort of qualitative information on the project benefits for us to try to gauge project benefits, but if you don't need a BCA in this case for the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, just note that if you do want to apply for the CRISI program, which we'll talk about in just a minute, you will need a BCA, but the Crossing Elimination Program, you do not. Pre-award costs. So you can count costs incurred for, let's say, preliminary engineering associated with a project if they were incurred before project selection for an award, and no earlier than November 15th, 2021. There's some other kind of technical pieces there, but we just want to mention that. And then finally, commuter rail passenger transportation projects are also eligible. However, commuter rail authorities are not eligible applicants here. Selected projects will be transferred to the Federal Transit Administration to administer if it is a commuter rail focused project. So with that, I will then turn to the sort of the CRISI program overview. Ryan, would you like to take this, or would you like me to keep going?
No, I could step in and give you a little break, Jenny.
Awesome.
So as Jenny kind of talked about, the first program is really focused to the community at the community level, and really focuses on one thing, and that's the grade crossing itself. And while FRA and DOT's primary mission is to ensure safety, the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, as does the CRISI program, really helps with also the mobility of people and goods, and that's kind of that aspect of the blocked crossings that program can help fund. In addition to the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, the CRISI, or Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvement Program, which just rolls right off the tongue, is really there to fund projects that improve safety, efficiency, and reliability of both passenger and freight rail systems. So this is one of the largest programs that we have as far as both the eligibilities as for both applicant and project eligibilities. It's also a sizable amount of funding under the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure law. As you can see here, our recent FY22 publication or announcement was $1.4 billion. It closed last year, and we're looking to make selections towards August and September of this year. Subsequently, and we'll be announcing the FY23 and 24 notices in December, January of this year and early next year, and are anticipating the approximate amount of that announcement to be $2.5 billion, which includes both the advanced and annual appropriations for FY23 and the advanced appropriations from FY24. So, as I said, the eligible applicants, you're going to see a much wider range of applicants, again, under the CRISI program, both under applicants and the projects that are eligible. So a lot of consistencies here. We still have a lot of the local entities, but you also start seeing Amtrak Class 2 and 3 railroads, rail carriers, TRB, the Transportation Research Board, as an eligible entity, in partnership with one of the entities that they contract with. The university transportation centers engaged in rail research, and also nonprofit labor organizations are eligible under the CRISI program. So this is an opportunity for applicants to really expand past just the local municipalities, and we encourage partnerships with coming in together. So, for example, a Class 3 or 2 railroad can partner with a political subdivision to improve the infrastructure in that the Class 2 or 3 operates on, but is in that political subdivision of that state. So this is, just a much wider range of applicants that are able to come in under this program. And likewise, the projects reflect that much wider range too. So CRISI is, as we like to kind of think of it, as everything that touches rail or has rail is most likely eligible under the CRISI program. So long as it's improving the rail infrastructure, it's most likely going to be eligible. And you can see here from this list a wide array of projects that are eligible to be funded, to include grade crossing improvements, rail line relocation improvements, just like under crossing elimination, the improvement of rail safety technologies, workforce development and training programs as well. If you're looking to partner with a labor union, a local university or a local community college to develop a trade program or a rail program that gets to apprenticeships or develops a pipeline of jobs and entry into employment within the rail industry, that's also an eligible activity under this program. New under the bipartisan infrastructure law within this program is measures that prevent trespassing, hazardous material plans, the preparation of those, and the procurement of locomotives that result in reduction of significant emissions. Within this program, very similar to the crossing elimination, 25% of the funds are reserved for projects that are within rural areas. So here, we talked a lot about the programs that we have, and Jenny and I we're going to kind of back and forth on this one. But we've noticed a lot of things that we want to highlight across programs that help applicants have their projects stand out, or have their projects be higher considered, or considered at a little bit higher of a level, or make it easier for FRA to really look at the merits of the project that's being submitted. So these next couple of slides are just going to kind of highlight some of those areas that we've seen, lessons learned and best practices that we really encourage applicants to consider when they're coming in for their programs. So project readiness is a key one. And what does that mean? That's where your project is in this life cycle that we have down here on the bottom. We're really encouraging applicants to come in for the stage of their project that they're ready for. So for example, if you're doing a grade crossing or a grade separation and you haven't done your project planning yet, we would encourage that applicant to come in for the project planning portion only. That allows you to, one, access kind of that set aside within crossing elimination that provides funding just for planning projects, and also ensures that your scope, schedule, and budget are a little more are adhered to so that your project is more likely to be complete on time, in scope, and on budget. We've seen that projects that tend to come in for project planning, development, final design, and construction can sometimes struggle with some of those scope creep or schedule creep as you're going through your project, because you're uncovering NEPA considerations that may delay your project, or NEPA considerations, for example, or project development considerations or design considerations that may increase the cost of your project. And if you come in for project planning, project development, final design, and construction, those federal dollars the amount of federal dollars you get for that project and that scope are locked. However, if you come in for the project planning and then come in next year for project development and final design, it allows more flexibility should your project experience cost overruns or scope creep. So we published last year some guidance on the project lifecycle stage, which can be found at this link, and are encouraging applicants to not only review that guidance, but identify within your application what project lifecycle stage your project is at and what project lifecycle stage you're coming in for. Jenny, I'm going to kick it over to you for this one.
Sure. Yeah. So to follow up on some other best practices, just want to note some points about non-federal match requirements. So the federal share of total costs that the FRA will pay shall not exceed 80%, which means that there is a 20% minimum non-federal match for projects. So we're looking for that sort of cost breakdown of what percent and whether you can meet the 20% minimum non-federal match. That match can come from a lot of different sources. So you can put that together with public sector or private sector funding. We will not consider any federal financial assistance or any non-federal funds that are already expended towards the matching requirement, unless compliant with 2 CFR Part 200. And so basically, we just want to see that you have identified the sources of your matching and other funds, and please clearly reflect these funds as part of your total project cost. So, sometimes we get applications where it's a bit unclear for what is actually going into the non-federal match, and we really need to see and value clarity and where those matching funds are coming from. Also, just to mention a little bit more technical, but in-kind contributions, including donation of services, materials, equipment, they can be credited as a project cost in a uniform manner consistent with that 2 CFR Part 200 and 0.306 here as well.
So one thing here on this slide, when we're talking about federal match, especially when we're talking about grade crossing projects, the total federal share, so that if you have Section 130 funds, for example, that are coming in and you're applying for crossing elimination or CRISI funds, those still count as those count as federal funds. So you need to make sure that your total federal cost does not exceed 80%. So it's not just 80% of the project that you're coming in for, but 80% total federal amount. So if you have other federal funding, a mega grant, for example, or other federal funding, that counts towards the 80%. So we need to make sure that when we're providing your budget, that you're showing where your non-federal and your federal break down, so that we can make sure that it doesn't exceed the 80%.
Absolutely. Okay. Just briefly here again, so that breakdown, again, please show clearly that project match breakdown, and please verify your funding amounts. So we have a form which is called the SF424 as part of your application that's required. We want to make sure that the funding amounts that you list in that form match whatever is listed in your application elsewhere as well. And again, also just in terms of project location, also want to note, we want to see that you can provide the latitude and longitude information, preferably in decimal format. And grade crossing projects in particular should include the grade crossing number or ID that FRA uses. So please include those in an easy to access spreadsheet. Ryan, anything to add here?
Nope.
Awesome. Okay, so benefit cost analysis. Ryan, would you like to add this one, or?
Yeah, so crossing elimination doesn't require a benefit cost analysis, but if you're coming in for the CRISI program or one of FRA's other discretionary grant programs, it may require a BCA. So if your program that you're applying for does, we would ask that you follow the 2023 DOT BCA guidance, which is provided at that link here. Provide an unlocked Excel document as an attachment to your application so that we can review your benefit cost analysis and can review the benefits that you're putting forth. And we encourage applicants to provide realistic and defensible benefits. Quantitative benefits are preferred, but if you can't quantify the costs, the time savings, or the cost of delay, qualitative benefits are acceptable as well. But really, we want to make sure that we're providing benefits, the realistic benefits for the project, so that we can provide an accurate assessment of the project and provide that when we're reviewing the BCA. So these next couple slides are some additional resources that are not necessarily linked to the discretionary grant programs, but may be helpful as you're looking to either plan your project or looking for funding. So as we kind of go through these, I'll kind of speak to each of them and tell you a little bit about them, and the link should be provided underneath each of the images on the slide. So this first one is FRA put together a discretionary grant program tool. So this tool is designed to help project sponsors and applicants align their project with the most appropriate discretionary grant program. So if you have a project and you're unsure what programs you can come in for, this tool helps you get down to that. So for example, if you're looking to do a grade crossing program or a project, this tool will identify, based on the information that you're selecting, which programs can help fund that particular eligibility. So if you're looking to do a grade separation, for example, this tool would tell you that the railroad crossing elimination and the CRISI program would be your two programs that would be the best fit for you. And then it provides a link to the program pages for that. So it's more of a consolidated way of getting information to applicants. FRA over the last year and a half or so has been really ramping up the amount of webinars and technical assistance that we've been providing. Typically, after each of our notice of funding opportunities, we publish a webinar that walks through the notice of funding opportunity and provides a little more information about it. In addition, we have typically ran at least 2 to 3 more focused, in-depth webinars focusing on topics such as statement of work, or the project narrative, or benefit cost analysis, and provide those, record those and provide those here on this website. It's a huge repository of information, and we encourage applicants to kind of go through and look at those presentations and view the recordings. A lot of questions can kind of be answered by the information that's provided there. So we encourage, really try and encourage that people look at those as you're kind of preparing your application. So the other thing I want to point out is the blocked crossing portal. So FRA has established about 3 or 4 years ago a blocked crossing portal, which is a way that the public can report instances of blocked crossings. It's open. It's publicly available information. You kind of go in, provide the crossing number and a little bit of information about the incident, and FRA then takes that information and will reach out to the railroad that's associated with the report and tries to kind of understand what is going on at that crossing so that we can better find solutions to minimize the amount of blockage at that specific crossing. So this is a really public-facing site that we're really encouraging the public to help us understand where these blocked crossings are occurring. There's hundreds of thousands of crossings across the country, and we really rely upon the public to help us understand where those crossings are being blocked so that we can help fix the solutions to them. The other thing that I want to mention is that the DOT has a pretty large repository of information, both about funding opportunities, provides information about all the different grant programs that are available across the department, provides technical assistance, as well as additional resources on the bipartisan infrastructure law at large. Now, this is cross-mode, so this is not just restricted to FRA, but this will include OST-led programs like RAISE or MEGA, as well as FTA funding opportunities or federal highways funding opportunities. So this is a really big resource that we're kind of trying to steer applicants towards, because the bipartisan infrastructure law really expanded the department's funding opportunities for projects. And there's a lot of resources available out there. So we want to make sure that applicants have all of those resources at their fingertips. And lastly, just a couple more links. So, the discretionary grant page at the first one is all the information about FRA's discretionary grant programs. The second one is that discretionary grant program tool that I spoke on a few slides ago. And finally, if you have a question or you want to request a debriefing from a recent solicitation, a notice of funding opportunity, or you want technical assistance on your project, we encourage applicants to use this email box that's monitored by several staff and is the best way to really get in contact with us about any questions, project specific or program specific, that's there. Like I said, it's our one-stop shop. It's much better than having just my email or Jenny's email, because this is monitored by a team of individuals, and we have a pretty good response timing on getting back to you. So with that, we thank you for the opportunity to present to you today, and look forward to helping in the future.
Thank you, Ryan and Jenny. That information is extremely helpful and will make a big difference for our cities and counties. In closing, I'd like to thank each of our guests for taking the time to present today about federal and state funding available to help resolve these railroad blockage issues. I truly believe this information will help improve the safety and quality of life of all residents in Alabama's 7th Congressional District. If any of you have further questions or would like to download this virtual workshop, please visit my website at sewell.house.gov and reach out to our grants coordinator, Yolanda Clayton, at 205-254-1960, or by emailing yolanda.clayton@mail.house.gov. Again, thank you for attending this workshop.